I guess what I wanted to do with this letter to my grandson was to warn him of the high cost inflicted by that decision to shelter in the perceived safety of cash.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Personal Investor Podcast. I'm Ed Monk, and I'm joined today by Fidelity Investment Director Tom Stevenson to talk about passing on investment knowledge. What have you learned that you would tell someone who has all their investing still ahead of them? This is quite a personal one for Tom, as he will explain. Before that, let me remind you that if you find this video useful or interesting, to please subscribe to the channel. Give us a like and leave a comment if you want to do that. And once you've subscribed, remember to hit the bell icon at the top of the page to turn on notifications so that you get new content as soon as it is released. That all said, Tom, welcome along. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Ed.
Good. Now, I've set it up there in my intro. Why is the idea of passing on investment knowledge to younger generations front of mind for you right now, Tom?
Well, people watching this may remember that a couple of years ago, I wrote a letter to my daughter on the occasion of her wedding.
I do.
And her 30th birthday. And so that was part of the sort of generational handing down of pearls of wisdom, if you like.
Yeah.
Anyway, as tends to happen when people get married, they then go on sometimes have children. And that's what's happened. So I'm a new grandfather, which is very exciting. Yeah.
Yes, and you've written a lovely article about this exact topic and this letter to your grandson. The first point that you make in it, Tom, is to highlight exactly how much can change in the space of a lifetime. You highlight just the last few generations of your family, and the whole world can change in that time, and that's a point that you make.
Yeah, I was kind of struck by the thought that here I was writing a letter to my new grandson, and then I kind of remembered back to my grandmother, who I actually knew for the first 20 years of my life. But she was actually born in the 19th century. She was born in the 1890s. And then I thought, well, my grandson, born in the 2020s, is very likely
to reach the 22nd
century. So here we are. We've got a span of two people who I've known personally, spanning 4 different centuries. And I was slightly gobsmacked by that thought. It just made me think about, so 5 generations and 4 different centuries, and just the world, the changes that have happened in the world. I mean, of course, my grandmother came into a world essentially pre-electrification, let alone the motor car, let alone the sort of digital revolution, air travel. And then my grandson, of course, he's coming into a world with the sort of nascent AI, net zero change, the end of the fossil fuel world probably in his lifetime, and just enormous changes.
And so the relevance of that from an investment point of view is to not be fazed by that kind of change, to embrace the fact you don't know what's going to happen and that the world's going to look very, very different from how you think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are lots of sort of things that you can conclude from that. One is that the world is going to change in unexpected ways, so to prepare yourself for that. In ways that we've often talked about, things like diversification, but also just the sort of just a recognition of, over a period of time, the increase in global wealth that has been experienced by those 5 generations. I mean, incomparable differences really in our standard of living and the things that we now take for advantage, and that my grandson indeed will take over the stretch of his life, which might, let's face it, it might be 100 years. The way things are going, he has a long life ahead of him.
And it occurs to me when you think in these terms of what can change over a lifetime, many of the things that, our generation, your generation, my generation probably considered to be sort of sacrosanct, employment, being rewarded for the work that you do, and that being the route to paying for your life. All these things might change. Investing can be a security against that change somewhat?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you think about the changes in that regard, which have happened just during our lifetimes, I mean, we've clearly moved from a world in which people were essentially looked after by their companies or by the state to a world in which, from a financial perspective, you have to look after yourself, in terms of saving for your retirement. That's the world in which he is setting out. And it's a world which, when my parents or indeed my grandmother was alive, was it was totally different.
Yeah. Next up in the letter, you talk about the importance of investing at all, and this obviously is something. This is kind of lesson number one, isn't it? Do it.
Just do it. Yeah, absolutely. And the sort of the trigger for that thought actually was some research done by a colleague of ours, Mariana. You may have had Mariana on the pod to talk about this. I'm not sure.
Yes.
But so her research looked back over the last 25 years, and it focused on this shift in the UK from people investing their household savings towards keeping their savings in cash. And I can't remember the exact percentages, but it's sort of from 2000, the amount of household assets invested in shares had fallen from the low 20s to the sort of high teens, but the amount in cash had risen from the high teens, I think, to about 35%. So been a big shift away from investments towards cash. And I guess what I wanted to do with this letter to my grandson was to warn him of the high cost inflicted by that decision to shelter in the perceived safety of cash. And Mariana ran the numbers. And so how she did it was she said, two investors, they both started with £5,000. They put £1,000 in every year for 25 years. One of them stuck with it and stayed fully invested. One of them, after 3 years of falling markets, because the starting point for this was 2000, top of the dot-com bubble. After 2 or 3 years of falling prices, they essentially bailed out, went into cash and stayed in cash for the rest of the period. So the difference in the amount of money that they ended up with was the sort of stick it out, courageous investor who stuck with the markets ended up with about 150,000. The investor who went into cash ended up with about 38,000, I think it was.
Yeah.
So huge difference.
Huge difference. So the lesson being invest, but then once you invest, continue to invest, no matter how scary it gets.
Yeah, through the ups and downs, because, over an investing lifetime, or even over 25 years, but, this is part of my letter to my grandson, over the sort of 60 or 70 years that he could potentially be investing, or even longer, there will be lots of ups and downs.
Yes. You mentioned in your letter another lesson, which is the importance of tax efficiency, Tom, in investing. Now, I hope that the first conversations you have with your son are not about ISA rules and pension rules. Yeah. But it is important, and there will come a time when it does become very important. This is something you learn as you get older and you move through life, and you begin to think about how you're going to get your money back after it's been invested. Tax efficiency matters.
So I kind of I framed it in the context of this letter as saying, this is not your problem to worry about. Because his mum, my daughter, also works in the investment business. So he does. Not only does he have good genes in that he's got got very long lived great grandparents and great grandparents. His great grandfather is still alive, age of 92. So he has good genes, but he also has a bit of financial knowledge within the family, if given that his mother and his grandfather work in this business. So heaven help us if we can't help him out a bit with things like that tax efficiency.
Yeah, and just on this point, it's it's just it's a great thing to have in mind anyway for any investor. But this lesson, I don't. You know about tax efficiency. It's kind of that's the way you should do it. Now, as I move through life and I begin to think, well, it will be very valuable to have tax sheltered savings later on in life that you can use to generate income, gaps in between taking a private pension, taking your state pension. It gives you flexibility to have different sources of tax-free investing.
Yeah, and you know what? We moan a lot about the sort of the taxes that we pay and the sort of the inefficiencies and the sort of perverse nature of the tax system in this country. But actually, there are aspects of it which are extremely generous. And one of the things, as we know, investing in an ISA or SIP, but children, he can do that right from day one. He can invest in a junior ISA or junior SIP or whatever, or his parents can do it on his behalf. And as you say, building up that sort of body of tax sheltered money will be a huge benefit to him in future years.
Yes. Next up then, Tom, you talk in your letter about how the world might change over your grandson's lifetime. And in particular, you ask the question of where will the economic growth come from in that time? Because it may well be different from where it's come from in your lifetime. You can't really know that in advance, I guess, but you can prepare for it as an investor.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I illustrated this was I was saying that, when, going back to my grandmother, she, her husband, my grandfather, actually worked for the post office. But he was out in Malaya, as it was then, literally sort of, hanging telegraph wires through the jungle. But it was a British world back then.
Yes.
And of course the world which we've grown up in has been a world dominated by the US, and of course that's been very favorable for investors, but the world in which my grandson will grow up in, it may continue to be dominated by the US. It may not. There's clearly a battle for economic supremacy. President Trump is in China at the moment, talking to President Xi. So, how that competition pans out over his lifetime will probably to a large extent determine where the returns are achieved in the world. And we don't know in advance. So, it's just another argument for being well diversified, because we don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, that being the lesson, spread your risk, spread your assets in places where potentially there could be growth. You won't be right all the time.
Yeah, and a good example of that, actually, sorry, Ed, is a good example of that is I'm actually writing a piece at the moment about India. So this is another example of the sort of future of the world, shifting to emerging markets, shifting to the big countries, China and India. And India has been a fantastic investment over the long run. In the short run, it's actually been a very bad investment. Yeah. So again, coming back to this point that there are ups and downs, and you have to invest for the long run. And ride out these ups and downs.
And not be worried that part of your portfolio is falling. And
because if you're well diversified, it will come out in the wash. You'll get a smoother ride.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, then, Tom, a word of warning in your letter about something that is likely to be a constant threat throughout your grandson's investing life. It's something that many investors fail to properly factor in. So what is that?
So it's something that we talk about a lot. It's the shadow hanging over investors, if you like, and it's inflation. Again, for the purposes of this letter to my grandson, how I illustrated this was I actually went and used the Bank of England has this inflation calculator, and you can stick in the date and it will tell you what the inflation rate is between the two dates. So I went back to 1894, which was when my grandmother was born. And what it told me was that what you could have bought for £10 in 1894 would cost you £1,100 today. So that is and the inflation rate over that period, the 130 years or so since then, has been less than 4%. So it's not been an excessive inflation rate at all. Not dissimilar to the inflation rate we've got currently, but yet over that extended period of time, that has resulted in a more than 100-fold decrease in the spending power of money.
Yeah.
And so my point to him was, you're going to have to run quite fast just to stand still.
And amounts of money that you and I will talk about as being sufficient for retirement or an annual salary or enough to buy a house are going to feel minuscule in the future. As you say, over that long sweep of history, he's going to be dealing in some big numbers to our understanding.
Absolutely right. So all the more reason to get started now.
Okay, well, that is just about as much time as we have, Tom. So let's leave it there. I will just remind you all that if you found this video useful or interesting, to please subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon to get notified as soon as new content is released. Give us a like or share the episodes. It really does help other people find what we're doing here. That all said, Tom, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Ed.